everybody, welcome to this episode of Retention Zone, when I'm super happy to have someone that is really an expert in retention, a bit more than I think I am. Tom Burrell. Ciao, Tom.
Ciao, Carlo. Great to be here. Thanks so much for the invite.
I think maybe the easiest way to start is tell me a bit about how you ended up in this direct-to-consumer ecosystem that we really like and love and spend a lot of time thinking about.
Yeah, sure. Look, okay, so I spent 26 years in retention. I graduated with a degree in geography, funnily enough. Then I did geographical science and data analysis in that degree as well. I went over to Australia. I was traveling the world, ended up getting stuck in Australia, stopped in Australia, and got a role at Orange as CRM analyst and a brilliant mentor. So I was very much into the data. That was late 90s. Came back to the UK.
Oh, wow.
Early noughties. Worked in agencies for 11 years. 7 years as global CRM director at one of the biggest independent digital agency in Europe at the time, which was called LBI. Then became Publicis Group Agency, and then became digital. But there I was global CRM director, and I worked with our local offices. We had 40 offices in 26 countries, and helped them to sell in and then deliver CRM strategy services. Worked with clients like Johnson & Johnson, Coca-Cola, MasterCard, and many, many others over that time. We won a lot of work in the Middle East. I relocated over there for 3 years and was executive strategy director as well as global CRM director for the agency. Then I went client side. I was approached to join Manchester United as head of CRM for the club. And then
So at least in terms of industry, we crossed paths. I'm not sure personally, but for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, definitely. And I was head of CRM there for the club and head of marketing for the venue. So like 2 teams. Then I went to helped Talk move from London to Manchester. And then I was approached to join DAZN and was there 3 years as senior vice president of retention. We had probably the biggest retention team in Europe at the time. Customer value management, CRM technology, parts of the contact center, parts of the product teams I worked closely with, and we were the kind of commercial stakeholders for. I was the most senior commercial stakeholder for elements of the product. So I was with DAZN for 3 years, and then in 24 I set up my own consultancy, which is retention coach, helping brands to leverage the retention opportunity.
I love that, at least with DAZN and Manchester United, that's my work. So everything else, and I think it's very important that I talk to people that are not only in sport and media, but come from, in your case, a long experience in everything else. Because the more we cross-pollinate, I think the more we learn. But give me, I know you're good at that. Give me a state of the retention ecosystem in 2025 in a nutshell, if you like.
In subscription, should we dive into subscription?
In subscription, absolutely. Sorry, yes, absolutely.
Business models, because retention is obviously important for every different sector, but it has a lot of importance, obviously, for subscription. I mean, the last 10 years, we've seen a massive growth in subscriptions enabled by digital technology, such as companies that you've worked for before. Secondly, it's consumer appetite. Like the streaming brands and the music brands have proven that we prefer access over ownership. I mean, we don't even think about buying movies these days to keep, right? Or buying CDs. It's almost like, show somebody who's a young person a CD, they won't even know what it is, right? So,
you see a lot of vinyl, a bit blur, but I have a lot of vinyl in the back, and
there you go.
Mixer and stuff like that.
Vinyls is like a culture around vinyl, isn't there?
Yes.
But, I saw something recently. Somebody showed like the save icon. So shown an actual floppy disk to a young person. They thought, "Oh, look, they've made the save icon." No,
that's nice.
Yeah, but we prefer access over ownership as consumers. We want to be able to consume all the content. We don't necessarily need to be able to own it. And then obviously subscription business models are extremely successful because they make a lot of money, right? Because the transaction's automatic and enabled by the technology. Many different types of industries over the last 10 years have been able to establish subscriptions, thinking e-commerce, IoT, SaaS, even digital service brands, and even like coaches, and consultants are able to create subscription services enabled by technology. So it's it's a massively booming market. It has been in the last 10 years.
Sorry, can I add one thing that is very personal to me, because I'm spending quite some money now. AI tools, they're all subscription based with very complex metrics. And if you really want to use them, and the free version it's not enough. It's a subscription, and you need to manage how many you have and what are the quotas. So even the new world is subscription based a lot.
Definitely, absolutely. Everything is powered by subscription because it makes money. It's easy to execute now, driven by the technology, and because we prefer to have relationships with brands where it's easy for us to kind of maintain access to those services or that function, and then drip in and drip out whenever we want to. So I think the where we're at now in terms of like the state of retention, kind of going to your question, is I think for many years and in many organizations this is still the case. Acquisition is given priority over retention. You see CMOs that come from acquisition backgrounds, and probably rightly so, because they are spending a lot of money in those platforms, right, in the likes of Google and Meta and so on. And retention gets neglected, or it gets left to the CRM marketing team. But actually, the CRM marketing, while they can play a role in retention, actually retention is not driven by CRM marketing. It is a contributor to it, but it's not driven by it. And I see many organizations that don't really kind of have this nailed down. There's an acceptance that retention is a result of the product experience. It's a result of the way in which the types of customers that the brand acquires, which will vary at different moments, and then also the way in which the customer interacts with different elements of the experience, whether that's customer service or whether that's CRM marketing, those elements of the product. But most brands don't really have a handle on how all of those fit together in order to drive the retention KPI, and therefore they don't optimize it in the best way that they possibly could.
And one thing that the thing that you say, I really like the fact that I lived through it. So it's not a theory. I was in exactly those rooms where clearly the marketing the direct consumer marketing people come from acquisition. Yeah. So really for many years, I think retention was an afterthought until, and I'm talking streaming, they realized that when the vanity numbers were not okay, because you launch an OTT and you want to reach blah, blah, blah. But then when it starts to revenue and profit margins at the end are the KPI that everybody will look for, then at that point, retention becomes priority.
Yeah, I saw actually a Google search index chart the other day actually that showed that searches for retention in the last 5 years have gone up like 100-fold, right? So you are seeing much stronger awareness, like you said, from when we moved away, particularly in the streaming space, from this idea that let's growth at all costs, and actually the vanity number is all that matters because you're after a kind of an IPO, or you're after a kind of share price growth, to one where actually it's all focused on the fundamentals and cash, and that's where you saw the rise in importance of retention. I totally agree with that. Yeah.
One thing that I want to get your opinion, even if it could be, it's a bit of a niche, but I've started seeing like the big creators in our space that maybe have a YouTube channel or TikTok presence or your own platforms, that the moment they want to create a bit more than just content and monetizing with ads or with sponsoring from brands, etc., and they want to create something like that they own, they're starting to create their own app, which obviously means direct to consumer between marketing for their own app, which means a subscription system, etc., etc. One, have you seen a shift? So is it a risky move, or is it the right move to really own then your community? And second, what is the advice you would give to these people if they do it, if they go on their own and operated, as we say now?
Yeah, look, I think that influencers, creators, creating mobile apps, definitely, it's, if you've got a big enough audience, it's a great way to maintain a strong relationship with that audience. I think, look at what Chris Redmond's doing in the Middle East in the recruitment space. He's created his own app more recently, hasn't he? That evolved out of a WhatsApp channel. I think there's if you've got the right level of engagement, you've got the right type of audience, it can be a really smart strategy. It just really depends on what market you're operating in and who your audience is, really, in my opinion.
Yeah. And obviously beyond and behind all of this, there are data, right? I'm sure you're um, as head of CRM of many organizations, and when it was called like that, oh, we have a CRM. I remember that magic word, maybe
Yes.
10, 15 years ago.
Yeah.
Data are important, and more, we all understand that there is a big potential already in place in some cases with AI. But so elaborate on data AI and importance of data and maybe the future of, or the current and future of AI. But especially, I've spent a lot of days and months and nights with dashboards, very sophisticated. Then you could personalize. So, I mean, we did a lot of progress. But to be honest, now I want to have a conversation with my data lake. To be honest, any
Yeah, look,
thoughts on that area?
look, let's be honest, right? No one wants a dashboard, really. No one wants reams and reams of data, right? They want the answer, yeah. And especially when you become very senior and you've got like multiple competing priorities, you want the answer to your question. You don't want somebody to produce a dashboard that nobody ever looks at, like neither the data guys.
Sorry.
Or you don't want, as a chief commercial officer or a chief subscription officer or SVP, to be able to go to your analyst and go, oh, can you give me this information? And then the answer be, look at this dashboard, right? That's not the answer you want. Like, so honestly, I think there's a lot of data work that's done where the brief that is provided by the business is interpreted in a way that maybe is not aligned to the need. And I think when you think about, like, you talk about this as well, like you talk about understanding the trends that are existing within your data, like being able to ask AI a question and receive that answer back, it just solves a problem, right? It solves a problem, cuts out a lot of issues. But in order to make that work really well, you need to have your data structured in the right way, right? But beyond that, more than that, like when you think about AI, I think AI will massively transform retention, and it already is starting to. I think we've gone through sort of the last couple of years, many, and particularly 25. I always feel like it's the end of 25 now, but in 25, a lot of organizations have been experimenting with AI. I think something like the research from McKinsey that I saw recently shows that 80% of brands are using AI. What does that mean? It basically means they're using chatbots, they're using for service, they're using ChatGPT to create content, right? That kind of like a very high level, right? Very basic tools, and they're experimenting, and then they're often not seeing an ROI. But what we're going to see in the next year, I think, and as some organisations like Mondelez have started to see, we'll start to see more organisations update all of their workflows in order to accommodate AI. So building the foundations, ensuring that your data is in the right place, structured correctly, connecting systems, and then leveraging agentic AI to operate within the next 5 to 7 years, according to Forrester, in a fully autonomous manner. And when we think about that, how that applies into retention, I talk a lot through my work of having lived this space for so long and worked with so many different brands. The key to retention is obviously your product proposition, what you offer. That's the foundation of the pyramid. I talk about retention hierarchy of needs. The foundation is your product proposition.
Yeah.
Customer fit, custom product fit, right? So different customers have a different level of fit to what you offer. But then beyond that, to drive incremental retention, it's ultimately about optimizing customer retention moments of truth. And most of these moments of truth exist within onboarding. So when you first sign up, some apps, some cohorts, if you don't engage them in 7 seconds, they're out. They're not coming back again, right? There's a lot of research that shows that. The service experience, really, really important moment of truth. If you're treated badly, if you've got a long wait time, if you have to reiterate the problem, if it's not resolved quickly, that's a big frustration and a very important moment of truth. And then, like in the context of streamers, personalization in the very early stages of the relationship is really important. The biggest driver of cancellation on Netflix is doom scrolling. People just scrolling, can't find what they want. Then come to the conclusion that there's nothing to watch, and therefore cancel their subscription. And the hardest time to personalize is the first time the subscriber accesses the platform, because you know the least about them, right? And what they do is they built a golden question. They built a data infrastructure to allow customers to answer one question in the silent flow, which is, which of these 3 shows do you like? and then that powers personalization as soon as they drop into the platform. So those are multiple different examples of moments of truth. But stepping back to your point about agentic AI, or your question about AI, what I believe that we'll see is those moments orchestrated by an agent. So you have the strategic imperative set by the human still, but then the agent optimizing the experience continuously and iteratively in order to drive the best outcome according to the cohort or the individual profile dimensions. So for example, in that Netflix example that I just used, that golden question may be continuously refreshed as different cohorts enter, and maybe the shows that they're showing will vary according to the market, the profile, the source of the acquisition, and all of that stuff. So I do see AI making a massive difference to the subscription and the streaming world.
You don't think is it a bit scary that we could lose control? I mean, if something goes wrong, maybe then you discover it when it's too late. I don't know. The signal, the sensor. I'm a lot into that. I'm trying to understand also, because even dashboard that didn't generate an action were useful, are difficult to navigate. They were useless, right? Because nobody was doing anything, even if the data were there. But when there are agents doing it, what if they take a bad route and we discover it a week later? I don't know. I'm just thinking that it's still a complex, I think, unless you've seen something.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Like, it's, there's definitely the risk there, and there's a lot of brands that are scared of that, right? There's obviously loads of examples like 23 and 24 where brands or people were encouraged to experiment with AI, and they were kind of uploading sensitive business data into ChatGPT and platforms, and it got revealed, right? And that is a simplistic example. But when you think about how agents are operating independently and create different journeys and so on, you're absolutely right. It's fundamental to have guardrails in place and the rules in place to be able to ensure that the AI only operates within the guardrails you set within that. But I think to make that work, fundamentally, what you need is a very good technology foundation, because many companies still don't have that, right? Many companies, even in the age of CDPs, don't have their customer data in to the right level of quality to be able to place an AI agent on top of it. And in my view, AI and agentic AI will amplify rubbish. And so to your example, right, where you've got a dashboard and it's built on the weak data foundation, then the result that you see in the dashboard is like, that can't be right. We kind of had 50% yesterday, right? And then and therefore, if AI agents are operating on top of poor quality technology or poor quality data, then they're going to be making decisions based on that poor quality data, and those decisions are probably not going to be the right decisions, right? So and I definitely see a need for brands to be able to ensure that when they start to implement agentic AI, which will be, it started already, but we're going to continue to accelerate over the next year, that they have the right foundations in place. I worked on a project with a big sports betting brand this year, where they're moving to AI, but they had those exact problems. They have the problems in the infrastructure's not there. So there's a lot of work to fix that in order to make sure that the solution will work.
And
your question.
No, but I understand sometimes my questions are a bit complex and multifaceted. So one thing that I also thought, and I read something you wrote, and I've experienced it. So you consider a specialist, and very often when you say specialist, you mean someone very vertical, right?
Yes.
But I think that's something that maybe many other fields, but I've experienced that in retention, if you're vertical, and you're not an orchestrator, that's a big problem. But I want to hear your take on that.
Yeah, definitely. Look, I mean, I think I'm a specialist in retention, without a doubt. But to be a specialist in retention also requires you to be a generalist in multiple disciplines. So some people will consider themselves a specialist in retention, and they actually work in a call center and they manage a loyalty team. So when customers will call in with a problem, the loyalty team will resolve them. But actually, they're specialists in retention in customer service. Other people consider themselves as specialists in retention in CRM marketing. So they know how to create a push notification or email that engages the customer, and that CRM marketing is a lot of my background, as I mentioned before. But to be a specialist in retention requires you to have an understanding of not just CRM marketing or customer service or product or design. Actually, it's more like a T-shaped role, and it's more about thinking about how you can apply an understanding of the customer into multiple channels in order to drive the desired outcomes. And I've seen this time and time again with brands that I've worked with and client organizations that I work within. The key to retention beyond the product experience is moments of truth, those moments that make or break customer retention. And you need your data teams to identify those moments, right? And it's not building a churn model, because when you build a churn model, it's too late. It's using signals from people who already left.
After the fact,
After the fact, exactly. It's using early warning signals. What are those things that contribute to churn over time? So those negative service experiences, that poor load time, that irrelevant content when they first hit the platform. All of those moments add up to create this doesn't feel right for me. This is not for me. This is not what I need. Or the price hike without the justification and the additional value, right? All of those moments contribute to retention. And because all of those moments contribute to retention or churn, then they sit across multiple different areas of the business. And what I find and what I see with many organizations, they don't really have a handle on this. Often they'll just push retention to the CRM marketing team to send out some emails and push notes and hope that improves retention. But really, you're talking about fine margins there. You're talking about incrementality for sure. And in big businesses with lots of subscribers, you can make millions of dollars with CRM marketing. But you're talking about fine margins, really. And then it's all the same in the product team. The product teams will notionally be responsible for retention, but then they'll kind of get very focused on features without really thinking about retention at the forefront. So what I help brands with is, what I help my clients with is identifying those moments of truth and then enabling those functions that own the moment to be able to optimize the moment for the best retention outcome. And so many brands, like if you think about customer service particularly, a lot of moments of truth exist within customer service. But most brands are like, how do we reduce this overhead? How do you reduce this cost? And that's when you end up with these like crappy AI bots that don't answer the question. Then you have to speak to a human, and then you have to get on the phone, and then it still doesn't work, right? And then in a lots of those organizations that will focus on just reducing cost in the service channel without actually having a big picture view of what else is going on in the customer relationship. And that's why I think it's really important to have that kind of that generalist view who can connect the dots across all of those different disciplines in order to drive the commercial goal, which is obviously retention.
Yeah, I've used the concept of T-shape a lot in the past, and I very often had my management looking at me like, what? But I think it's super crucial, like in this case. One thing that, as you were discussing, and it's also connected to the conference that was in Madrid these last 2 days, it's obvious that when we create examples, we talk about Netflix or Prime or the big things, right? But I think there are, and something like, I don't know, I'm thinking payments, right?
Yeah.
Netflix or even login when you have a new device. So this kind of moments where, nowadays, the fact that they're done well and I can trust the payment, it's obvious. For this big platform, it's not an issue. And then I can decide that I will churn from Netflix, go to Prime or Apple TV, but still it's the value is there. So I think as you go one tier down, and it's whatever, the Nike, fitness app, or the thing that maybe are not so central in your life, but you still like to have them, you use them maybe as the value or the brand is a bit less known. Also, the level of trust you may have is like, are the payments in your region done well? Will they, remember you when you have? So there are, as you go down in tiers, I think it's more difficult. For these people, is more difficult. There is a lot more things they need to really be careful about, because there may be a lot more moment of truth. So for people that, at the moment I'm not working with Netflix now. So for the people that we meet in the industry that are even big size company, I think a lot of things are much more difficult than for the big guys. It's an impression. So there are a lot more things to consider in this ecosystem of issues, if you want. I don't know. Maybe it's my it's an improvised thought. So I'm sorry.
No, definitely, yeah. Like no, look, payments is because there's so many different payments providers in so many different markets. It becomes massively complex, doesn't it? Even for big brands. Obviously, like Netflix is 400 million subscribers, and and Amazon Prime as well with their hundreds of millions of subscribers as well, right? It's not a problem, right? They can always develop the payment gateways and fix the problem for every common payment provider in every single market. Like, so it's not an issue for them. They have the resource to be able to do that. Smaller brands, they're going to struggle with that, and it becomes like a compromise. And honestly, when we're at DAZN, we didn't offer all of the payment methods for every market, right? We operated in 200 markets. It's not possible to be able to do that as you're scaling. So you just have to take that on the chin and roll them out as and when you can.
And that's why I was thinking of your moment of truths. In this case, you have a lot more, because if I go to something that, okay, I know it, and even now with AI tools, if the moment I start to go and want to pay, it's not clear, I cannot get any invoice, I get frustrated really easily, because again, it's not that my life depends on that one tool, no? So exactly. I don't know.
Massive issue, right? Like, if you're a smaller brand and you can't provide the payment method that the customer wants, then you may not get that customer, right? Yeah, for sure, it's a critical that transaction, yeah.
Oh, it's fascinating, and I really, it's funny that we never met, but a lot of the language you used, I really think it's my language, so I really like this conversation. Sorry.
Fantastic, Carlo. That's great to meet you.
So what is the last, the one thing that you think people should focus for 2026 in this industry?
I think it's about getting the basics.
Easy question, sorry.
No, it's a great question. I think it leans into what we talked about in terms of agentic AI, right? So in order to be able to leverage the agentic AI opportunity, which is huge, by the way, and Mondelez are already reporting, big uplifts in the impact of their activity, and some others are as well. You have to have the foundations right, and so many brands still today do not have the foundations right. But the foundations, by that I mean integrate platforms and systems to be able to allow the agents to talk to one another and then give the most appropriate action. But fundamentally, as you've mentioned, data, right? Ensuring that your data is available to those agents. And then the layer above that is making sure that the CEO and the CFO and the CMO all completely aligned around the retention priority and how different elements of the experience contribute to retention, so that you can remove the conflicts, such as the one that I mentioned around customer service cost minimization versus what it actually means for a customer in terms of the experience that they have. And my favorite example of that, by the way, is Amazon, where if you ever have a problem with Amazon delivery and you call them, they will refund you straight away because they know how important that moment is, right? So,
it happened many times to me. I always use it as an example.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
It's an amazing example, and you feel, even though you had a problem, you feel much more positive about the brand after you had that problem, because of the way they handle it. And that's just a perfect example of a really good handling of a moment of truth. But so many organizations are focused on what we're doing next quarter in terms of the P&L. How can we reduce cost? How can we, and often they look at things like marketing budgets, and they look at things like service costs as things that they can pull back on, not realizing that can damage the P&L, right, over the short, medium, and long term. So look, my overarching advice for organizations in subscription and streaming as we head into 2026 is, if you're not already there yet, make sure that your foundations are in place before you embark on an agentic AI program of work. Because if they're not, then you're going to really struggle, to be honest, to get it operational. So that's my biggest piece of advice.
So thank you, Tom. It was really fascinating. I'm happy that I somehow found you and reached you for this episode. Thank you.
Oh, thanks, Carlo. It was great to speak to you. Thanks so much for your time.